Hey, what's shaking, everybody? This video is going to be a basic rundown regarding my most recent knee injury, where I'll discuss my approach, intention, and basic plan of attack to rehab, which has been one of my more intense injuries that I've experienced, which has left me unable to walk or weight bear for the first week, and then unable to load any type of knee flexion for the first 23 days. So I'm going to be sharing what I did to remedy such situation to the point where I can now walk half marathons on a daily basis. I can surf heavy beach break where you're being thrashed around. I can do plyometrics, specifically sprinting, which is one of the most ultimate progression tests. Essentially, I can live the life that I desire without being held back by the injury. And this has all been accomplished in just a month and a half. And so some things that I want to emphasize before we get started. First off, this is not a program or a protocol for knee injuries. There are so many nuances and variables that go into healing as it relates specifically to the individual that need to be taken into account. Hence why I only offer a one-on-one rehab service. Secondly, I'm going to be focusing more on the why, the principles behind what I'm doing, as opposed to the what's or the how's, that be specific movement inputs and how to program it. Reason being, we need to understand the principles, the reason behind movement in order for those movement inputs to be medicinal. And that way you can take any input and create a healing response. I tend to gravitate towards things that work the best, hence why you'll see the following clips. But these movements are only medicinal to the level that I'm talking about once the principles, the reasons, the why behind them are understood and implemented. Lastly, take into account that this is a short video and I can't include every nuance that goes into healing, but I will condense as much important and practical information as possible within this video. Hope you enjoy it. Let's get started. The sequence of movements you are seeing is a progression that we use for all soft tissue injuries. To quickly list the order, we have non-weight bearing range of motion movements, extreme slow top and bottom position holds, weight-bearing ROMs, drops, and rebounds, through which one can use an infinite amount of methodics and implementations to create your own specificity. Now, these first few movements may look simple and nonchalant, but understand in rehab we are looking to create a stimulus cumulatively that is greater than the stimulus of what caused the initial damage. This is going to be accomplished through repetitive failure, that be physically with the tissue, and then emotionally and psychologically via your willpower. And so every movement that you see here, I'm doing so for 3, 5 to 10 minutes at a time, 1 to 3 times a day, every single day, working under the premise of maximizing and exhausting my current expression and intention within each one of these inputs. And so to give you an example of what this looks like, compare the difference of the two limbs. I'm still executing the movement maximally on the affected side from a force, speed, load, range of motion, and tension standpoint, but it is expressed to the level of what my brain and body will allow for that damaged tissue to handle without an increase of symptoms. So in other words, we're stimulating to a level we can still recover from. Now, clearly the affected side is moving at a regressed fashion. So that means we need to massively increase the volume, the workload, as we can now sustain more of that stimulus within that regressed fashion. Movement is one of the most powerful catalysts for healing, aka we heal through movement. And so with soft tissue injuries, your movement inputs need to be amplified by the intensity and the volume way more than if you weren't expressing an injury. So as you can see here, flexion extension of the knee was abused throughout this journey, but through repetitive exposure, I learned a cool trick of tibial internal-external rotation that really lights up the knee joint and the surrounding tissue. Simply change the angle and you change the movement in its entirety. Now, a big concept in rehab is that we must stimulate that of which we cannot do. And for me, that thing was loading knee flexion in a closed chained fashion. I was getting really strong and competent in every other area, but not that. So this move you see here, I'm essentially attempting to stand up using the tissue through an overcoming isometric, which over time allowed me to get to this point. Take a listen. But today I could finally get into a squat with quad just above parallel, so not totally deep. So what I did was hold assisted squat for 10 minutes straight. This is our position, and we're going to hold for time. And this is the aftermath. I can't fucking move. Time still goes. I can't reach the motherfucker. Now that's just a fun example of what it can look like with some of the extreme slow holds where you have the opportunity to stimulate maximally to your perceived quote-unquote death. But anyways, I've said this before, once you're able to load knee flexion, your rehab process and progression becomes easy money. So here I am finally squatting after 23 days, absolutely stoked. In this clip, I crushed a perceived threshold of back-to-back 5-minute straight extreme slow lunge. In all of my years of training this way, I haven't been able to do that, so pretty neat. I'm increasing my performance in the face of an injury. Hell yeah, that's the design. That's how it's supposed to be. And then the rest of these clips are just snippets of my training sessions, gradually increasing the velocity and introducing higher levels of force as it relates specifically to the knee. But understand, I'm not just doing knee exercises. I'm still training the rest of my body, joint wide, body wide, from toes to thumbs and everything in between. You can't just do knee exercises to heal a knee injury. It doesn't work that way. You have to integrate everything and see how your damaged tissue is correlated and integrated with the rest of your system. So here's just a couple more clips for you to enjoy as it relates specifically to the knee. These last two movements you see here, single leg lateral bounds and sprinting, could be considered as final test and progression, some of the higher outputs that you can do. And the knee responded beautifully. So onwards from here, the only way is up. Pun intended with the hill sprint. So there you have it, a basic rundown of how I approached my most recent injury. Please take into account there are so many nuances and variables that go into healing that I wasn't able to discuss in this video. One of the most important being the neglect of any symptom-based reduction intervention. We call them passive treatments, but essentially it's anything from the outside in, means anything external that you use to subdue a symptom. As when you subdue a symptom in that fashion, you are drastically subduing healing. But that's a video for another time. May the information today spark some thoughts, spark some curiosity for you to dig a little bit deeper when it comes to all things healing. Thank you for watching and taking the time out of your day. If you have any questions or concerns, or you want to work with me directly one-on-one, please reach out at any time. Have a beautiful day and live it up.